In Lesson 1-3, you'll be learning about properties of numbers. The first few properties that are shown in your textbook are ones that I'm not going to require you to know the names of for our quizzes and tests, but I am going to go through them just so you're familiar with them and you will see them again in future math classes. The first one being the reflexive property. Basically, any quantity is equal to itself, such as 5 equals 5 and 4 plus 7 equals 4 plus 7. The symmetric property, if one quantity equals a second quantity, then the second quantity equals the first. So if A equals B, then B equals A. Or if 8 equals 2 plus 6, then 2 plus 6 equals 8. This would be helpful when we're solving equations. If for some reason you want to reverse the two sides of the equation, so you have the variable on the left instead of the right, you can do that by the symmetric property. The transitive property says if one quantity equals a second quantity and the second quantity equals a third quantity, then the first quantity equals the third quantity. Whew, that was a mouthful. Basically, if A equals B and B equals C, then A and C have to equal each other because they're both equal to B. And then substitution property, a quantity may be substituted for its equal in any expression. We do this all the time. If we have 4n and we say that n is equal to 11, we substitute 11 for n and say 4 times 11. The rest of the properties are ones that you may be quizzed or tested on. The first ones are some addition properties. First being the additive identity. For any number a, the sum of a and 0 is a. Basically, when you add 0 to something, you get what you started with. So it's the additive identity property. When you add 0, you get the same thing you started with. The additive inverse property will be used a lot when we're solving equations, when we're trying to eliminate something from our equation. Basically, it says a number and its opposite are additive inverses. Or, in other words, a number plus its opposite is equal to 0. Like 3 plus a negative 3 is equal to 0. We will use that idea a lot when equation solving. Now we're on to some multiplication properties. The first one being the multiplicative identity. It's just like the addition identity, except for this time it's going to be multiplying by 1. So any number times 1 is going to equal itself. Then the multiplicative property of 0. If you take something and multiply it by 0, you get 0. Multiplicative inverse. This will be used a lot when solving equations, especially if they're ones with fractions in it. Basically, it says that if you take a number, or a fraction such as 4/5, and you multiply it by its multiplicative inverse or its reciprocal, 5/4 in this example, when you multiply those together, you're always going to get 1. So a number multiplied by its multiplicative inverse or its reciprocal is always going to equal 1. These last two properties are ones that you have definitely seen before as early as elementary school, but kids often confuse the two still in middle school. I'm going to tell you how I remember the two. First of all, the commutative property has to do with moving the numbers from one place to another, and it only works with addition and multiplication. I like to think of the word commute. When you or your parents commute to work or to school, you move from home to work or from home to school by taking the bus or by a car or by walking, but you're moving from one position to another. With addition and multiplication problems, you can switch up the order and it will still equal the same thing. 4 plus 8 is the same as 8 plus 4. 7 times 11 is the same thing as 11 times 7. This applies to both addition and multiplication. It does not work for subtraction. It does not work for division. Associative property, I like to think of the word associate. When you associate with somebody, we could say you're hanging out with somebody or associating with them. Right now, in this particular problem, 3 and 5 are associating or hanging out together in the parentheses on the left. But over on the right, we have 5 and 7 hanging out together. With addition and multiplication problems, you can switch up that grouping. Like over here I have 3 and 5 grouped together, and on this side I have 5 and 7 grouped together. If I work out the math, it's going to still equal the same thing on both sides. 3 plus 5 is 8, and 8 plus 7 is 15. Over on this side, 5 plus 7 is 12, and 12 plus 3 is also 15. So we can change our grouping and still get the same answer. Notice the numbers have not moved. 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7. The numbers are still in the same spot. I've just changed what's being grouped together. That's the associative property, or you're changing the grouping. There's one of those aha moments.